everyone. My name is Emily Fu. I'm the Content Director East for Connect CRE. Today, we have the great pleasure to be joined by Chris Corsten, Sustainability Consultant for EBI Consulting, and David Burge, Project Manager with Market One Builders. Hi, Chris and Dave. Welcome.
Hi, Emily.
So today we'll be discussing green certifications. Chris, can you briefly introduce our audience to the green certifications companies can pursue?
There's several out there now. Seems like there's more coming all the time, but the ones that most people are more familiar with are kind of the LEED and BREEAM. BREEAM is more prevalent in Europe than the States, but with so many international clients, it's kind of crossing the border a lot more. LEED came out of BREEAM actually when it was formed several years ago, and that one's become a very popular certification in the States. But those are a little more onerous to get sometimes. So some other clients are asking for kind of cheaper, easier project certifications to get. There's also WELL, which obviously focuses more on wellness, and there's Fitwel, there's IREM, Certified Sustainable Properties. So Fitwel and IREM are kind of the lower cost, easier, if you want to say, certifications, as opposed to WELL and BREEAM and LEED. So we've heard a lot of clients lately saying we really don't want to go through all the big headache of LEED and BREEAM and WELL. We like to do it a little bit easier, so they choose Fitwel and IREM CSP instead. Those are the major ones that I've seen that most clients are going for now.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
But there are other ones out there, such as a little more easier ones that people are dealing with is Active Travel, which is more designed for bicycling and alternative transportation. And there's also BOMA 360, which focuses a lot more on commercial real estate. So those are out there now. There's several that companies have to choose from.
So despite the prevalence of green certifications in new property development, some property owners still view them as lacking cost effectiveness. What are the factors contributing to this belief in the industry? From
my perspective on that, every time we've talked to any investors that are considering a green certification, it's about the money. You know, are they going to recoup their investment in this? Is it going to be worth in the long run? Are they going to see a good ROI out of it? And that is a tough thing to determine. A lot of times, green certification agencies say you could get anywhere from 5 to 20% per year return on this, or they'll see their rents raised 5 to 20%, or their sales will be raised 5 to 20% based on getting a green certification. But I think those things are kind of hard to quantify because there's so many other factors that are there. So money is definitely the first thing people are thinking about. But there's also so much pressure now. Investors are expecting to see their investments be more responsible to the environment, to society in general. So they want to see they're putting a lot of pressure on the companies to go green, to better themselves, and they want to see that. So they're using their pocketbook to pressure companies to do better, and that can only be a good thing for the industry.
So what kind of ROI can companies get from pursuing these certifications?
I think that's very hard to quantify. David, do you have any insight into that?
Thanks, Chris. I can give you specific information on the Ziggurat project that we just completed, which was a LEED O&M. This project actually started way back in 2017, but achieved LEED certification in 2022. So fairly recently, here we got certified. The cost on our perspective, it turned out 21 cents a square foot. I did calc that out just to make sure that we were going. Now that's just our cost on this project. That's what it turned out. It could vary greatly depending on just how many and to the degree of adjustments and modifications to the base facility are necessary in order to achieve those goals. But As a specific example, we came out at 21 cents a square foot for our client.
Did you see any, is there any data that shows any return on that investment at all?
So I don't have specific data towards that. This, our project started out as a requirement in the lease from the tenant. The lease was negotiated from the tenant to the building owner, and this was the state of California Department of General Services is the lessee. And so in order to maintain the state of California in the building, you can actually see the ziggurat photo behind me here. They needed to come up with a LEED certified project. So they determined LEED O&M was the way to go. So I don't know how that equated to future or past dollars. I believe funding was created in the past in preparation for this lease negotiation.
So there you go. It's
Gotcha.
hard to quantify,
Hard to quantify.
but it kept a client, an important client in the building. So
Absolutely. It kept
That's-
380,000 square feet of leasable space, right? No small chunk of change.
So regarding the smaller, easier certifications you mentioned, do you think it's harder to find clients to do the lower level ones?
not as much anymore. What we're seeing is more demand for the Fitwel and IREM CSP certifications, mostly because of like what David was saying. I think their project took a couple years to finish and cost quite a lot in the end to do. I don't know if David wants to share how much it costs total, but I think it was in the hundreds of thousands probably to finish that project, right?
Well, if we include all of the actual construction related to lighting and energy upgrades and the redo of the building management system, then yeah, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars for certain. The lighting controls and the retrofit itself was $1.5 million, and I believe the BMS upgrade itself was in that $700,000 range. So yeah, the costs, if you need to go to that degree, certainly increase exponentially.
And for something more like an IREM certified sustainable property certification, you're looking at a lot lower cost, I would say, in general, in order to get your building refitted or do the things that that certification requires. LEED really has very strict parameters of what you need to be able to accomplish, and it's a little more complex. A lot of calculations, a lot of external work that needs to be done to get it to certification. Where IREM CSP, for example, as kind of consider it a lower tier LEED project. The parameters are very succinct and very cut and dry. Either you have LED lighting or you don't. Either you have high efficiency water faucets or you don't. You either get the point or you don't. So it's a lot simpler, a lot more easy to manage, I would say, as a project. It's quicker to do. It's a lot easier to identify whether or not you are eligible for the points that they have. So it's a simpler, more streamlined process. And even though it's not as stringent as LEED, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a joke either, that it's not worth pursuing, or that it isn't a tangible certification to have. From my opinion, if you have the IREM certified sustainable property certification, your property is pretty good, and you should be able to hold your head up and say we've got a good property here if you get it certified through IREM. Same with Fitwel. And when you're talking about wellness for a building, whether you have WELL, which is a lot more stringent, sort of like LEED, versus Fitwel, which is a little less stringent, like IREM is, you still have a great wellness building. You still have a building that's very well dedicated to wellness and dedicated to health of its occupants. So just because it's an easier or cheaper or more simplified certification doesn't necessarily mean that it's not worth it. I believe it is.
That certainly provides a differentiator in the marketplace as well.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And any differentiator is good.
Yeah,
When you're marketing or or trying to, decide whether or not your rents should be at a certain level. I think having any of these monikers on your building is something that definitely makes a difference, especially to the younger generation, I would say. Me being a 48-year-old Generation Xer, my generation's probably not even as interested in it as the younger generation is, that really is more focused on making sure that their money, their investment, they're part of something a little bit cleaner and better for the world. So I think that's a big deal to the younger generation.
So you mentioned young industry members. Do you find as they come up through the ranks, the younger generation is able to influence senior management to pursue certification, or are younger executives not really part of the educational process when working with clients?
It really was kind of a top down. It was the older folks leading the charge, and I commend them for that because it was so new and it was unusual. But to be able to have that concern for the environment and the energy efficiency of the structure and the integration of the design disciplines together was amazing. There was a point in time in the industry where that kind of relaxed, I guess, for a better term. And I do feel a resurgence through the younger generation for certain. There are projects I've been involved with where, the executives on top are like, well, just sign the document and stamp it and give me my certificate so I can move on. And that's not the approach the younger generation takes. They're very much, no, let's document, let's get it right. Let's make sure that this energy efficiency is happening. And I really see that on the engineering side, specifically on the mechanical and environmental engineering, the plumbing side. And I really enjoy it when the architects come in from, more of the overall perspective of putting the building envelopes together and the IAQ and what it is that you're experiencing as you integrate with the facility. So I would say in the beginning, it really was kind of the old folks driving the boat, and now I do feel kind of a push from below, which is nice. How about you, Chris? What do you experience?
Yeah, kind of the same thing, actually. I've worked with quite a few engineers, and kind of there is a disparage with what you see from the 50, 40-year-old engineers and the 30-year-old engineers. You see a staunch difference in what they think is important, I guess. I've had these discussions with a couple people, and it seems like the younger generation now of engineers coming out, it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't we do the most efficient thing? And
Right.
what do you think? And why would we leave that alone? Come on, let's make it the best we can. And efficiency and thinking forward is really important to them. They're really thinking about not just how a building is now, but what it needs to be. The world is getting cleaner. We need to be part of that. So let's design it now and prep it now for what we know is either coming from regulations or coming from just demand to make your buildings more efficient, greener, and safer for everybody. That's what I'm seeing from the younger generation anyway, from these, especially the younger engineers that are a little hungry to make a difference.
So as consumer or tenants, what are the things they can do to move the needles, and how could that further shape our industry?
Chris, I'll let you take that one, being closer to the real estate side. You'll have more experience on that one than I.
Okay. I'm seeing it two ways, actually. It depends on where the market is, I think, is a big part of it. I came from a market that was, and I actually own a lot of duplexes and such myself. So, but where I have them is more rural areas that are not as focused on these kind of things. Whereas me as a landlord and, developer of the property, I'm more focused on getting it greener and electrifying it, getting rid of gas, doing these kind of things. The tenants aren't as worried about that in that particular rural area, but in kind of the more city areas where they're paying a higher premium for properties, they're expecting better amenities. They're expecting better performing buildings, more efficiency, and so I definitely see in more of the metropolitan areas, or even smaller metro areas, that there is a demand from the again, more from the younger generation that wants to see their buildings perform better. They want to be, they care about the wellness, especially the health of their buildings, and they expect that their building is going to be more efficient, and they're not going to have to pay huge bills because their systems are so inefficient. They want to be in a better, safer, cleaner habitat, in my opinion. That's just what I've seen firsthand myself.
And from my perspective on that, what I have heard with the interns and younger folks working here in our office, you know, they're kind of used to their parents not having an energy bill because they have solar panels on their roof and things like that. And when they're going out to lease an apartment or, you know, their own new digs, it's like, oh, wait a minute, an energy bill? What is that, right? You know, so they're definitely looking for that lower energy cost because it's a surprise to them that it even really exists.
That's definitely a California thing, I think. Though.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris, you mentioned from your own experience. So as young consumer tenant or just from young generation perspective, what are the things they can do or the channels if they want to, you know, we want to be a part of the a greener cause?
Well, you know, from what I've seen too, there is a huge demand for property. There's a huge demand for rents. There's a lot of competition to just get an apartment in a lot of places. Rents are high and the supply is low. So in a lot of areas, they don't have a lot of power to choose what's in their buildings, and they can obviously vote with their pocketbook when they can choose a place. But because demand is so high and supply a little bit lower, the number one thing they can do is talk to their landlord and say, can we upgrade this? Can I upgrade it if I want to? Can I change the light bulbs to LEDs? Can I do some upgrade to my place? Which isn't fair a lot, you know, you could say for the tenants, but the best pressure that they can do is bring this up to their landlords and say, hey, I'm paying so much money for this apartment. I want it to be better. I want it to be cleaner. You know, even if I have to do something to help, can I do something? Or obviously they can demand it, but they just don't have a lot of power. In my opinion, they don't have a lot of power to make the change at this point. I don't know, David, what do you think? Out in California, it might be a different story.
No, it's a supply and a demand thing for sure, but definitely the more money that is available in somebody's pocketbook, you know, they have less expenses. You can certainly charge a premium on your facility. I am aware on a commercial side where we have some cities in our area here that have their own power generation, and so they have a different rate structure than the two large municipal energy providers. And I am aware of companies who have gone across the city line to a neighboring city just because the cost of energy is lower over there. And the generation is more consistent. It doesn't have the rolling blackouts and such that we sometimes experience up here. And those two things are enough to have them move the line. You know, that keeps their reduces their costs and increases their overhead and increases their factors of safety or predictability in order to have, whether it's heated goods for food, you know, in a restaurant, or cooled environments for restaurants and grocery stores and whatnot.
So Dave, you mentioned the Ziggurat building in Sacramento earlier. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the process and how your project partners each contributed?
So as Chris mentioned earlier, you know, the LEED process is just that. It is a process. And it, using Chris's words, it can be a touch onerous. There's forms to fill out. There are backup requirements. There are calculators to complete and submissions to do. That said, it's, you know, it's not all negative. So I'll go through real quickly the process that occurred for us out at the Ziggurat and let the viewers kind of make their own decision. So Back when the initial lease was contemplated between the state and the building owner here of the ziggurat, they needed to determine, was it even possible to get this building LEED certified? And so the building owner hired EBI to come and do an feasibility study and determine, yeah, in fact, there are things that can be done. And one of the things I really like about it was that EBI was creative and said, you know, these are maintenance items that are on your to-do list to replace in the next 4 to 5 years. Why not do them now and capture those credits within your LEED approach? And so that became part of our LEED scorecard, our roadmap, so to speak, as to how we were going to achieve this. Building owner said, yep, we've got an opportunity here to keep our client. Let's jump on it. Went out to contracts. We got hired as design builders for this project back in, let's see, the process started in 2017. We were hired late 2019 and came in with our team. So the team, just to kind of give an idea of the perspective here, we have the building ownership. We have the building management team on site. With ownership was Nome Capital Partners was the building owner. Newmark was the property manager. The California DGS is the tenant, and they were involved. Market One Builders as the design builder had hired the architects and the engineers. And then, of course, we retained EBI as our lead consultant to keep us on this roadmap. So that was our team. And then the process was really validate the plan, execute our new plan. We had a documentation phase, and then, of course, the ultimate submit and award phase. And I'll break those down a little bit into the chunks. So we took the initial feasibility study from EBI and really started getting into it with our architects and the engineers, and determined, well, we needed some reports to validate where we are, baselines and things like that. We performed the ASHRAE 62.1 back in early 2000 and 2020, just to kind of get the building baseline as to where we are. And there were repairs and modifications that the building ownership had to do to, you know, kind of plus things up and plug some holes, so to speak. We followed with the LEED scorecard. We had a occupant survey to determine if are the occupants comfortable in this space. Are they too hot? Are they too cold? Is it too loud? Is it too quiet? You know, is it the proper for them? Do they feel safe and comfortable? And the environmental air quality is good. So we went through that whole occupant survey phase, and then we took that information in and modified our designs and went in and determined that, okay, some of the things that are a little bit aging in this property that was built in 1998 needed some repairs. So that's the BMS system was then upgraded, and the tenant, as part of their TI, was doing lighting upgrades anyway. We were taking out the old LED, or I'm sorry, the old fluorescent fixtures and replacing them with new LED fixtures. And in conjunction with that, we added lighting controls, the occupancy sensors, the on-off timers. You know, you walk into your office and you go out to a meeting. When you leave the office, your lights shut off. And when you go into the new meeting room, you walk in and the lights turn on. And when everybody exits, the lights turn off automatically. So the goal was to decrease the energy usage, even on a micro scale like that. And you multiply that over, you know, essentially 370 some odd thousand square feet of space, and it makes a big difference in the end run. So that was kind of the validate and planning stage. We got into the execution where we start making those changes physically to the building. That pushed us into the next level, which was the ASHRAE Level 2 report. And that starts to identify some additional energy conservation methods and water conservation methods, just based on how the building itself is designed and operated and managed. So those were implemented and executed, and we kind of looked at our scorecard again as we're always going through. We're checking to make sure you're still on path and on target to LEED Silver. we found some, low hanging fruit, and for lack of a better term, we executed on those. Continued our documentation, and we got to the point where we really came across a point where all of us in the industry had really new construction experience. And this being a O&M, we're like, oh, this is very different. We now have to get into establishing policies for how the building is managed and how the renovations occur inside the facility. And we needed to get into grounds maintenance and what happens with the grass clippings and the recycling of the leaves that fall. Everything down to timing of fertilization and water schedules and things like that. So there was a lot more going on than just the standard new construction that we were used to. So we reached out and, well, we identified that we were missing some expertise, and again reached out to EBI, who helped us to supplement our team with the experience that they have. And so they helped us with writing some of those green purchasing protocols and the renovation policies, and assisted with the calculations on the how to validate that our purchasing program is accurate and that our materials and materials were appropriate and not off-gassing. So that went on, and EBI was a huge help with that. And it was interesting because the group that required the LEED certification, or the LEED Silver for this, in this case, was the tenant. I don't think they realized the degree that they were going to be contributing to that. So we had to get into even their purchasing policies and determine how to track that so that it could be reported to USGBC and therefore LEED to obtain our credits. And that was quite a challenge because the state purchases on a bulk type of arrangement, and we're looking at just this one building. So we really leaned heavily on the experts at EBI to help us kind of sort through that documentation and to get it together and make it work out. So that's the documentation phase. We also had to, of course, prove that the upgrades we made were in fact energy efficient and not just calculating out on a mathematical table, but made sense. So we had a performance period. So the 1 year performance period, you have a little control over that within LEED, whether you go for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a year. We determined a full year would be the most advantageous based on the weather extremes we have out here in Northern California. So we had the 1 year documentation and performance period, which lasted from about mid 2021 to mid 2022. And during that time, we capitalized on collecting all of our documentation and tracking and filling out our scorecards. And that way we were able to submit in mid 2022. And lo and behold, in November, we achieved LEED Gold. So we exceeded our requirements and the expectations of our clients, and by a lot of hard work from all parties involved. So it was a process. It was a good process. And I think the building is considerably better. It's operated much more efficiently. It has a smaller environmental impact on the world. I know that the state of California is greatly benefiting from the reduced energy costs. They pay the bills at this site for the energy usage, and they are very pleased with the results of their investment there. So that's our story. It started in 2017. We were hired in 2019 and achieved our award in 2022.
Wow.
Chris, how's that for timing?
That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time. The
Yeah,
one-year
Chris,
performance period certainly added.
yeah, I was gonna say, Chris, you wanna give your perspective of hearing about all the whole process?
Yeah, I had a very minuscule role in the Ziggurat project. I had scoped out some of the construction waste issues because that was a big deal. Was little things you don't think about is, when you're renovating a property and you've got a ton of waste coming out of it, it's either going to go to a landfill or it's going to get recycled somehow. And the Ziggurat project, they were working to recycle a lot of the drywall, the wood, all of that waste, but there's very few recyclers for that kind of stuff. So they had identified a particular recycler in Northern California that actually separated the drywall, separated the wood and metals, and actually recycled construction waste. So that was a big deal. I think you guys ended up getting some points for that as well.
Absolutely.
That was the only part that I had any role in with the Ziggurat. Some of the other ladies that worked on it did a great job, though. For me, when I looked at the timeline, particularly you were talking about, so it took a few years to actually get this done, whereas some of the other certifications are a little quicker, like maybe 6 months to get something accomplished. And a lot of it depends on when a client approaches us with a particular building or a set of buildings that they want to do a certification for, it depends on how good the buildings are to begin with. If they're already doing great things, they're already very green, very efficient, the process can be just quick. A couple months, you're certified, you're good. If you have to make a lot of changes, like the Ziggurat building had to do a lot of renovation, if you don't have to do all those things, it's very quick, can take a couple months. But if you have to do them, then it depends on how fast the client wants to move on the renovations or the changes they need to make to get the credits and the points they need. So it's really a dependent process. We did, I mentioned the IREM CSP project, the Certified Sustainable Property certification from IREM. We did 10 of those projects with a multifamily client that had 10 different large multifamily properties that they wanted to get certified. And that process took us probably 4 to 6 months. And a lot of it was just gathering evidence because they were really a very, very sustainable company to begin with. And so it didn't take a lot. It was more gathering evidence than making any changes to the property. So it can be really quick. If not, yeah, it could take years. It depends on that's where you're doing a feasibility study, like David had mentioned before. It's good to do a feasibility study before you jump into trying to do a certification, so you'll know ahead of time how probable it is to get your certification, or how much work you need to do to get it before you even engage in spending a lot of money trying to do the certification.
Yeah, Chris, I'd like to add that I thought it was quite clever from EBI's perspective to incorporate just planned maintenance into the process. So it wasn't like an added fee, so to speak, or an added expense. It was a planned expense. It was just timed properly.
Right.
Wow. That sounds, Dave, would you say all the 5 years and all the work described worth it?
Well, you know what? There's a lot of pride for everybody that was involved. The team had its share of loud moments, discussing things with each other and how to do it quicker or more efficiently, or does it have to be done? Those kinds of things. I think the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Everyone that's been involved in this process, whether it's the state, whether it's the building ownership, those who maintain it, us contractors and architects and engineers and EBI, everyone's been so proud of the results of it. And, as nice as that is to say, the real results are the reduction in energy costs that is really providing a benefit to the tenant. And the reduced environmental impact that it's benefiting the rest of us, all of us. So I count it as a win.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris and Dave, for sharing all this great insights about, actually have more options other than LEED that could take shorter time and also more affordable to do, and how desperate the whole industry need a greener built world, and especially the young generation. And thank you, Dave, for giving us a real life case of what it takes and what are the process of getting a LEED certification.
Absolutely.